before everybody watching decides to switch to the home shopping network because it's more exciting. Let me see if I understand this correctly. So the faster bill, this car registration fee, again without a vote of the people, brings in $250 million. Right. But by changing Bird-Arveschoug, since Bird-Arveschoug, whatever above 6%, goes into essentially roads or one-time projects like roads or buildings. So in one way, you're putting 250 this way, but you're pulling out even more immediately, meaning this is nothing more than hocus pocus to get more money into the general fund to put into those permanent programs. Do I have that right?
That's it. When you pull the number that you're pulling out, it's 250 in new taxes, 300 and some odd millions lost in about two years, according to our nonpartisan economist.
But the real issue here is that the timing is beautiful. People are concerned about the economy. People are nervous. And so they can blame things on things like Tabor, but they can't blame Tabor now because of Referendum C. Tabor's no longer an issue. But they can look at Bird-Arveschoug, and the left is so good at this political judo that they can get people scared about Bird-Arveschoug, but we're not going to hit that 6% limit this year. In fact, we're not even going to hit 0% limit, are we? There is no reason to even talk about this issue this year. Is there? Tell me, are we close?
Well, I think it certainly is realistic to expect that as we move forward beyond this year, that we will generate revenue above the 6% cap. And if this
but not this year.
Not this year.
Or next year.
Or next year. All right, so we got 2 years that this isn't even gonna count.
Well, at some point we're going to hit that 6% cap on general fund spending, and at some point in the future, hopefully we'll see the Tabor limit triggered. But at this point, that 6% cap is the only constraint in that budget, the only tax and spending limit that is stringent or effective at this point. And from an economist's perspective, I'd like to point out another flaw or problem with what you guys are doing down there, and that is
it's all Josh's fault.
It's Josh's fault. No, I think he's on the right side on this. But basically, when economists look at government and government spending, we identify some types of government spending that are productive, that actually increase productive capacity, that contribute to growth.
Building roads would be one of those.
Roads, capital projects, infrastructure. We know that's positive. When you start shifting money from those types of productive expenditures to other spending, that's going to have a negative effect on growth, particularly if you start spending that money for Medicaid, social welfare, transfer programs that are subsidies. That has a negative effect on economic growth. So basically, if they pass this legislation, this is going to decrease the state's economic growth. And I can't think of a worse time to take money away from highways and capital projects, particularly in a recession where we have underutilized capital and labor in those construction industries. This is the time we should be spending money for capital projects and highways. And to me, it's ludicrous to say, well, no, we're not going to do that this year or next year. We're going to spend that for transfer programs or subsidies. I can't think of a more damaging policy for economic growth.
Let me add another point to this, which during Ref C, and by the way, Josh, you did an incredible job during Ref C. Under a lot of pressure, you stood up on the western slope and said, here's why it's a bad idea. Your district, by the way, rejected Referendum C higher than any other county, and that was because you were out there talking to people one-on-one and explaining a complex issue. But during this debate, since I ran this campaign, I remember them saying, Jon, don't worry. When Ref C comes, you will still have the Bird-Arveschoug amendment to restrain the growth of government. And now that Ref C has taken away the so-called ratchet effect of Tabor, now that Ref C has raised the floor permanently, it's actually ratcheted up the state budget, now they want to get rid of Bird-Arveschoug. I find it amazing. During Ref C, it was Tabor that took a hit. We didn't touch any of the other things. We didn't touch Gallagher, which puts more of the property tax burden on property owners who own commercial property. We didn't touch Amendment 23 because, heaven forbid, we can't even have a discussion about education funding and win that one politically. But that is driving the economy. And now people are saying, including my senator up in Boulder, saying that Raleigh Heath saying, you know, with so much more money in the system, we could have hyperinflation. And if we do that, then we've got to take care of this. Wait a second, you know, we're not having hyperinflation now. We don't know if and when it'll come. Why can't we wait and deal with this if it is an issue? And even if we don't deal with it, don't the rules say that with 2/3
Yeah.
you guys can step away? Explain that to me.
Well, key point. I mean, Arveschoug-Bird itself is a 6% limit, but it also says if you're in a fiscal emergency, which there's a pretty good case to be that we are now, that with a 2/3 vote, that you can actually exceed that and grow at a faster level.
So in other words, let's say inflation is not 6% but 10%.
You could grow.
And you have 10% growth in the revenues coming in. You with a 2/3 vote, the legislature can say we're going to use all this money for permanent operations.
And we've actually offered that. We've offered that to the Democrats as the economy recovers and revenues go up. If we need to go above the 6%, let's take some of that and build our reserves, which, by the way, we didn't do after Referendum C, and so we're doing the same thing that we did before Referendum C, but that's another story. I want to go back to
Actually, quick detour. We only got a few minutes.
Yeah.
But what a great point.
Yeah.
At the Independence Institute, many in your party, after the Ref C passed, said this is the opportunity, since it's coming in twice as big as we predicted, because nobody predicted that would happen. And now that we've got so much more of that money coming in, let's put it in a reserve in case there's a tight time. The Democrats said no, and here we are.
4 short years later, the exact same scenario as we had before Ref C because we spent the money. But I think the reason people are pushing it now, and God bless them, but what they're doing is taking advantage of a grim economic circumstance to grind an ideological axe. They don't like Tabor. They don't like spending limits at all whatsoever, and they're taking this bad economic news and trying to push through an agenda. And it's to me, it's bad faith because it's not good public policy, and it's a false pretense because, as you point out, these limits won't even trigger for at least a couple of years.
If that. All right, gentlemen, I want to say, so what's the answer, which is the usual thing I say after griping about something. But now I've got to say, what's the problem? You know, it seems as though they're trying to peddle an answer to something that isn't an issue. So is it right for me to ask you, well, what's the solution? I'm not even too sure what the problem is.
Well, the problem, it seems to me, is basically you have a group of people, I think the Democratic leadership at this point is basically saying, we want to weaken and get rid of tax and spending limits. We want to go back to the fiscal policies we had back in the 1980s before Tabor and Bird-Arveschoug were passed. And in that period, government spending grew more rapidly than personal income. Once Bird-Arveschoug and Tabor were in place, we had constraints on government revenue and spending. Government revenue and spending grew less rapidly than personal income.
But it still grew, and not for a single year did government not grow under Tabor.
Exactly. And this is also a period, of course, where that set the stage for cutting all sorts of taxes. We cut the income tax, the sales tax, the personal property tax. Property taxes have been reduced. We created a business climate, one of the best business tax climates in the country, and we also achieved the second highest rate of economic growth of any state by the late 1990s. So basically what the Democrats are saying is, we don't like this. We want to go back to pre-1992, where government grows more rapidly than the private sector, and we can spend money for all these special interest groups, whether it's education or transportation, whatever those special.
I think you're dead on, but for me, it comes down to a very simple thing. It's not about the cash. It's about the Constitution. And Bill Ritter, who won't come on this program, even though his predecessor came on regularly, won't answer a question. Why not just bring it to the people? All right, we've got 10 seconds. Any last thoughts?
Well, they're entitled to their opinion, but the key point, I think, it's the point you're making on the Constitution. Go make your case to the public if you want to make these changes.
Senator, thank you. Professor, thank you. And particularly thank you for watching. Tell a friend. Go to our website, independenceinstitute.org. Listen for me late nights on 850 KOA. We'll see you next week.
You jab a jab, bamboozle, nuka, noozle, bippity bop, she-gall. You jab a jab, bamboozle, nuka, noozle, bippity bop, she-gall. I mean, you keep on talking, but you don't know where to turn it.